Hi everyone, welcome back to Insights. We're here at the beautiful Falls Lake in Durham, North Carolina, taking the opportunity this afternoon, beautiful evening, to share a couple very special, rare 356 models. Cam, before we break into, these as separate chassis, where were we at in this time period in the 60s, moving, 63, 64, getting to these SE-GTs?
Yeah, Porsche has done their final evolution of the 356 with the C and SC. These two cars are 2 of 4 cars produced with GT options from the factory. So true lightweights and 200 pounds lighter than a production car. So the two owners of these cars knew what they were doing. It'd be the equivalent today of a 911 owner going straight to Porsche Motorsports and saying, I want carbon fiber doors from Motorsports, stuff they're racing on the RSR or Cup cars, a carbon fiber hood.
I don't want any glass in the car.
I don't want any glass, I want, the Plexiglas here, Lexan now, and then obviously the special GT seats that both these cars have. So the owners of these cars in period when they were ordering these cars were very smart because they knew kind of ways around the rule book going directly to Porsche and to their GT program and ordering super lightweight cars built for competition. And how about the feeling that we are driving these out here on this beautiful fall day?
Right, and I know that Cam and I have driven half of these examples, and a lot of people have a misconception where they think a 64 or 65 C or SC coupe has a similar driving experience, and it's just not true. It's that old adage of driving an old car fast, and it's a very different sensation. Kind of hard if you don't get seat time in a lightweight, but at the same time, from our experience in driving them just today, it's pretty remarkable, the feedback and how fun it is.
It is. 200 pounds makes a difference. I think anyone today driving a modern car, a modern 911, if you could get 200 pounds out of it, you feel significant performance differences and just the feeling and feedback of the car. This is a carryover program from Super 90s in the lightweight program where you could order a Super 90. Again, the Super 90 made to be competitive with the Carrera and as a price option for buyers and customers racing all over the world. But this, again, is kind of an evolution of that a la carte GT program. And although they're, in Super 90s, as we know from previous cars we've had with GT options, they didn't all come the same. And as we know, Porsche didn't legendarily record everything on the Card X, the warranty card.
Obviously special rare models as a whole in entirety, but breaking them down as individual chassis even further, they become even more rare. And the fact that this car, known in the 356 community, this car has actually been shared. Excellence magazine over the years, many articles. Bruce Anderson, famous, great custodian of 356s early on, in the 60s and 70s. He was a second owner of this car. Changed hands several times and guys have shared the car. So we've known this car for a long time. And what's cool about this car essentially is it's been shared at concours levels. Pebble Beach in 1970 with a third place podium, early on in its life. I think also in 1970 it had 6 or 7 additional first place finishes at different concours across the country. So it's a fairly well-known example between these SC lightweight cars.
That's a really neat story. Bruce Anderson is kind of like the godfather in the industry of technical knowledge. He wrote the 911 Performance book. He was chair for the Porsche Club on the technical side. He wrote all the technical articles for Porsche Excellence magazine. And just a wonderful gentleman, one of my mentors. So it's just such a special story. It's such a well-documented car. Our friend Bruce Sweetman has done articles on it. And it's just a really well-known car. And then now this has arrived in our lives. Tim, why don't you talk a little bit about the story? How
this totally opposite end of the spectrum. The Signal Red car, obviously subtle differences than the GT Silver car. This car has changed hands a couple times, but we got a phone call, several months ago at this point, and not being able to travel for obvious reasons in 2020, it took some time for us to go inspect the car and eventually acquire it. But it's a very special car. Opposite of the quote-unquote grass racing car, this car was actually campaigned back in the day and raced several vintage races. Well, at the time they weren't vintage races, I guess, but
Well said, sir.
yeah, exactly. I think of them now. We go to all these great places and go vintage racing, but
This particular car was purchased at Brumo's. That car was purchased at Don Wester's, another infamous Porsche dealer in Monterey that was really into racing. And so obviously we all know the stories of Brumo's. This car would end up in 1964 in the hands of a man named David McLean. And David McLean took this car and raced it throughout Florida. Most importantly, Paul Whitman trophy race in 1964, which was the SCCA regionals in that time in Florida. He ends up winning first place. The gentleman, David McLean, hires 2 other drivers, his 2 buddies, and believe it or not, they go to the Daytona 2,000 kilometer race called the Daytona Continental Race. And not many people are aware, you think about 2,000 kilometers, that was 1,000 more kilometers than Monza or Nürburgring. So it was almost competing with Sebring, almost the equivalent of 12 hours of racing. And these gentlemen end up winning their class. And I hear all the time about, lightweight 356s really didn't have big results. And this car finished in front of several 904s, several Carrera GT models. It goes on to Sebring and finishes 32nd. And then they raced it one more time in 1966 when Daytona, of course, became the 24-hour race. And unfortunately, it did not finish with gearbox problems, but it's just a remarkable story. And again, at this time of a privateer buying a car with GT options and going to some of the biggest races. These were World Sports Car Championship races, Daytona and Sebring, and performing at the highest level in their classes. And today's drive, the speeds were going not very fast, but you felt like you're doing 150 miles an hour in a modern GT3 RS. It was just so cool.
yeah, it's very special. And I guess the simple thing that I don't think we've touched upon that not everybody may know, right, in these few cars that came from Porsche at the time, as this car was racing, campaigning against Carreras and everything else, these are pushrod cars, right?
Yes.
The 1600, right, CC engine,
Right.
like a 64 or 65, C or SC normal production car.
Yeah, that's right.
So
It's
a
so
pretty
neat.
special.
The details on this car, again, as we know, as the car was found in period, and some of the options not recorded, but we know that the roll cage has its stamped VIN numbers on the roll cage, which is just so cool. And then it has these, of course, the GT seats, but these aluminum door frames, which is so cool, which I've only seen on very few actual 59 GT cars and a few T5 356B Carrera GTs. We've seen the aluminum door frames. But again, some of these things are not on the Cardex, but we know through photographic evidence in the car and the history of this car that these actually were with the car when delivered. Because I've seen really funny things on original cars that we know are original that were not recorded, again, on the Porsche warranty cards.
Right, as they were recorded by hand, in pencil or pen or whatever. And if you know my handwriting, it's sometimes better not to just put it on the Cardex. But at the same time, it's so cool to think about, these cars weren't just produced all together, right? They're all built individually. So you get some of the differences, perhaps in a spider mirror versus a Talbot versus, various things. And none of them were the same, like in a normal production line. So
and what I love about these, kind of the anonymity of these cars, right? Because you drive up and you really have to be a 356 geek to really see that, oh my gosh, those are lightweight cars. And that's why I kind of like the GT3 Touring. That's why I have one. It's not coming up, it's not a RS with a whole wing. Right. It's kind of an understated thing, and I kind of I love that fact too.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Well, Tim, this has been a remarkable day of the short time away from the shop, to be a part of driving these cars and also caring for them and preserving the legacy of them. That's one of the most rewarding things that we get to do as a shop, is work for our clients and keep these cars on the road. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, for sure. To be part of that custodian process for these two great gentlemen that own these specific, lightweight examples. What a thrill, what a beautiful afternoon, and let's get back in and do a little bit more driving.
See you, everybody.